So, welcome to Don't Follow the Shepherd. I have a special guest from New York City, Dr. Oksana Sivkovich Fagin. She's a cognitive psychologist. Uh, she teaches at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. Her research area, or research interest is in hypnosis interventions. Um, or hypnosis-based interventions. And I'm fascinated with the area because it's something I knew very little about and kind of was, well, not only was I naive, but I also wasn't as aware of how widely hypnosis is used in modern medicine and how it's a kind of an adjunct. So, why don't you introduce yourself a little more? And then we'll get into some questions about what you do and the general nature of the field.
Sure. Hi, Jordan. Thank you
Hi.
for having me for on your podcast. So yeah, as you said, my name is Oksana Sivkovich Fagin. I am cognitive psychologist. I study psychology. I teach psychology. My research focuses in hypnosis. Very curious about the mechanism of hypnosis. So, what exactly is going on in human mind when they are hypnotized? Like, what are the mechanics of that? So, that's what I been researching. And at this point, I do research at Borough Manhattan Community College, which is CUNY, one of the CUNY schools in New York. And we do some interesting experiments that involve neuroimagery as well. So it's pretty wide area of my interest.
Yeah, one of the questions actually I didn't ask you specifically was what drew you to to that particular subspecialty, if you will. Um,
I I I was extremely skeptical about hypnosis. I think my skepticism drew me to this area. Before I got into graduate school, I saw the stage hypnosis performance, and before I knew about that, um, I knew that people were acting there. I didn't believe that people would go on a stage and do what they did, and that was not a performance. But that particular time, it was a private party, and I knew people on the stage. And when they came down from that stage, I approached them and I asked them, I mean, come on, you were playing along. You were not really doing that. Um, Not only they did what they did not remember that. And to me, it was so fascinating. I'm like, how could that be? So I went to graduate school to figure out what's going on, how people are getting hypnotized, and how they do what they do and they don't remember that, how people can make all those changes using hypnosis. And during my doctorate and my research, I was dedicating to answer those questions.
wow. One, it's kind of inspiring to talk to someone who pursues research questions based on that kind of experience. I think a lot of people are drawn into a profession to apply it and to really have quandaries about a specific field, discipline, um, uh, field of study. It's interesting. So I too was a little skeptical, knowing a lot less, but the history of hypnosis is fascinating in its own right. Um, and I think that is validating though when you read about it, some of the pre-scientific and scientific movements in the field. That's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about the history?
Yeah, so, well, as a phenomenon, hypnosis was used long before the word hypnosis was invented. So we can think about ancient cultures that use this state, trance state, if you may, the chantings, shamanic states, prayers. So it was noticed that people can get into a specific state and they could get better, and they could get healed. So if you will think about hypnosis as a phenomenon, it was happening a long time ago, but then as its own thing, hypnosis is attributed to the work of Franz Mesmer. Around 1700s, this healer, he was very popular in France, and in Paris, he had a very popular um, practice where he would heal people. What he claimed he did, he was channeling animal magnetism, this force, the healing force he was channeling through him. And it was a big show. It was a theater. People will get into his salons. They would all sit around the tub with metal rods sticking out of there, and they would apply those rods to the parts of the bodies that they were aching. And then Franz Mesmer himself, he would show up there with beautiful music playing, with candle lights, dim lights, and he would approach everybody and he would put them into the state, and he would mesmerize them and give them suggestions about their illnesses, and people would get better. So he was very popular, but then scientific community paid attention to him and tried to figure out what exactly going on, what is this animal magnetism is, and it didn't pass the test, the scientific test, but the attention was brought to this very unique state, and people getting better after hearing suggestions from someone else. So that's how it all started.
Wow. And it became, I mean, it wouldn't be the first scientific innovation, if you will, or discipline to generate skepticism and controversy. But that kind of moved it into, I mean, maybe that accelerated even it as an advance in human medicine. Because I don't think people realize how widely hypnosis is used as a treatment modality. And maybe before we go on, could you talk a little bit about the range of areas where hypnosis is used? Because I think that would help audiences kind of really appreciate what it's about.
Oh, that is a very wide range. I have to say that hypnosis may be one of very few phenomenons that simultaneously exist in parallel universes or parallel worlds. Like, for example, there is a scientific research on hypnosis. There is a Society for Experimental and Clinical Hypnosis, which I'm a member, where people, clinicians, and researchers, we do empirical approach studying hypnosis. Their research using hypnosis on hypnosis, and the results of that research are published in top-tier peer-reviewed journals. At the same time, there are many communities of so-called alternative hypnosis. You can hear about stage hypnosis or performance hypnosis, comedy hypnosis. You can hear about past life regression. You can hear about erotic hypnosis. You can hear about dark hypnosis. You name it. There are a lot of alternative movements to that. So, uh, the past of hypnosis is very controversial. The present is confusing and controversial as well. And sometimes I feel like I do have to add more information when I say that I do hypnosis, uh, because people are confused. There's like, what do you mean? What hypnosis do you mean? Is that the stage hypnosis? Is that magic, or is it something else? So, hypnosis is used in medicine. Hypnosis is used to help people to decrease pain or anxiety. Hypnosis is used in dentistry to help people overcome phobias. Hypnosis is used in helping in childbirth. Hypnosis is used to help people to stop habits, smoking cessation, make better habits. So there are a variety of very different applications of hypnosis, but you have to be more precise and explain yourself when you say that, yeah, what I do hypnosis.
Well, one thing that intrigues me is that mindfulness training, meditation, breath work, all these things uh, haven't suffered from stigma the way
Mm,
maybe hypnosis has, and yet hypnosis is so widely applied. So it's so interesting to me that, uh, that something can be kind of labeled or become, people have yet to overcome kind of their fear of something that is so effective. And so, that really caught my attention. Um, uh, oh, I wanted to ask the difference between a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist, because I think that's a crucial distinction for people to kind of contemplate perhaps um, the stigma itself.
yeah. So in the United States, you do not have to be licensed practitioner to do hypnosis. Right? So that's why in many states you don't have to be licensed. That's why the term hypnotherapist is used sometimes a bit loosely. But the main difference is that a person who can do hypnosis, who can induce hypnosis, who can create hypnotic phenomenon, they are hypnotists. Um, Hypnotherapist is someone who's trained in um, trauma responses and clinical way of treating problems. So, hypnotherapist is a person who is doing that ethically and who is trained to be a therapist. But hypnotherapist should know how to induce hypnosis and do hypnosis as well.
Yeah, I remember I tried EMDR once.
Mm,
Um, tried a lot of different things. Um, and it was interesting that the practitioner's influence and training, well, I should say their training was important in terms of the type of certification, of course. But I was actually concerned because I had heard horror stories about, well, I don't know that they're horror stories, but well, maybe they are for people, right? And I suppose there's that same kind of concern over hypnosis. People are probably a bit reluctant to try something where
mm,
they feel that their mind is captured.
yeah. Mm. It's one of the biggest fears, right? When people hear about hypnosis, the word hypnosis. The problem with the reputation hypnosis has comes from misuse of it or abuse of it. There were cases of misuse of hypnosis during 80s and 90s when hypnosis was used in therapy by therapists to recover so-called repressed memories. What we know about memory right now is memory is extremely malleable. Memory can be changed. And memory is very malleable under suggestion in hypnosis. So, what happened back then, people were recovering memories that they thought happened to them, but there were false memories. Those memories were created while they were in trance in therapy. And unfortunately, there were innocent people um, got hurt and accused in something they did not do. So, that didn't add to hypnosis as a reputation of something um, very safe. There are other stories about hypnosis, like, for example, hypnosis was used by some government programs like MK Ultra, and that added to the fear of mind control. So hypnosis is related to this mind control that Hollywood movies, if you think about any Hollywood movie that talks about hypnosis and shows hypnosis, it's instant change. It's total loss of control. It's people seeing something very different instantly. Hypnosis doesn't work like that. But again, Hollywood doesn't help to reputation.
So does the profession do the professional societies that you belong to in the field, do they work a lot to educate people? I would imagine that they have not necessarily a task force, but committees that are interested in advocacy and education to combat the kind of reputation, or is it not necessarily the case?
Well, uh, that happens. I don't think it is extremely successful because, as I said, there are so many different communities that do hypnosis. So if you defend hypnosis from the scientific point of view, then there are other communities that do hypnosis and they say they do hypnosis and they do that differently and they present it differently. So it's very difficult to fight for the reputation of this phenomenon. It's so rich, it's so um, widely used. Um, and we're not even talking yet about the covert and overt hypnosis, so something that adds to the complexity of this phenomenon. So, yeah, people talk about it. We talk about that in articles are published, but we have to continue talking about that.
Well, you mentioned covert and overt. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Um,
Yes. So far, we've been talking about hypnosis that is can be called overt hypnosis, right? So when I'm gonna say, "Hey, Jordan, would you like to be hypnotized?" Right? So uh, um, I can perform hypnosis. I can put you under hypnosis, and you can either agree or disagree, right? So that is open, overt hypnosis that has word hypnosis in it. Now, within overt hypnosis, we have two approaches how to do that. So, one is direct hypnosis, is when I tell you what to do straightforward. So, I put you in trance and I use my authority as a hypnotist, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you will feel changes. Um, I will tell you this cigarette stinks. You cannot stand that smell. And then you come out of the trance and then you smell the cigarette smoke and you don't like it. Right? But then there is indirect hypnosis, is when you are in trance and I don't tell you things directly what to do and how to make changes, but I'm telling you a story. I'm going to tell you a metaphor. Milton Erickson, he was the father of indirect hypnosis. People will go to his session and he will tell them absolutely unrelated story to their problem. And then after the session, they will feel better. So that is an indirect, um, overt hypnosis. Now, covert hypnosis, it is something that is not labeled as hypnosis. So but still influencing you. So there are techniques, there are ways to um, influence people without um, announcing the plan to influence them.
Fascinating. Do you think that I'm sure this has been addressed at some point in history, but were clinicians at all ever drawn to this to the field because of some of the control that may have been conferred to them? I think of psychodynamic psychotherapy today, where you have clinicians or comparing, say, cognitive behavioral therapy to, say, a more psychoanalysis. There's something about the therapeutic relationship that is built on trust, of course.
Mm.
But I could imagine that, like in any discipline, there are people that have exploited it, and that has led to that has been somewhat detrimental to the reputation of a given field.
Hmm.
Or maybe I shouldn't even go there because I'm not trying to taint your your discipline, but it seems like such a powerful ability to be able to uh, hypnotize someone, whether you're
Hmm.
doing it clinically or, recreationally.
I mean, I have to say that when someone is called themselves hypnotherapist, it this fact, or if someone calls themselves a hypnotist, the mere fact of you knowing that you're dealing with a person who has the skills to hypnotize others, it gives you power, your power, that you can just not go under hypnosis. So when a lot of people ask this question, can I be hypnotized against my own will? So I always say that if you know that you're about to be hypnotized, no, you won't be able to be hypnotized against your own will. But if you do not know, those techniques can influence you. But at the same time, I have to say that there's so many other influences in our life that change how we feel, change our decisions, change our choices. I say that we are already hypnotized. We're all hypnotized by advertisings, by social media, by politicians. uh, there are many techniques are used by all those entities that I said that are hypnotic techniques. And again, hypnotic technique doesn't mean some magic. Hypnosis is natural human psychological phenomenon. It involves very normal, natural psychological processes like attention, your focused attention. They grab your attention, your emotions, your decreased peripheral awareness, your decreased vigilance. So all those um, bits and pieces of what hypnosis is are very natural. But so that's why don't be afraid of hypnotherapists. Just pay attention to live hypnotizing you, to your phone hypnotizing you, to the TV or whatever other sources of information you relying on.
Well, that brings me to one other point. As a cognitive scientist, um, do you beyond even hypnosis, are there things that you do in your everyday world where you're more attuned to behavior that say, you know, that say you might not have otherwise been. I mean, um, uh, we think of some clinicians, for example, maybe they've honed, they've worked on they're more empathic, perhaps,
Mm.
um, over conditioning and training for years, which you could argue is, has a hypnotic component in itself. But as a cognitive scientist and cognitive psychologist in particular, how do you, are there things in your everyday life that you notice about people that you only wish you could maybe, hey, reach out and say something?
Well, yes. For example, one of the things that I've noticed when I got into the depth of studying what hypnosis is and how hypnosis works, when it changes you from within, it changes how you feel, it changes your choices. One of the component of that to be possible is suggestibility, right? So we humans are suggestible creatures. We are influenced by whatever external factors are. And this whole debate about free will, non-free will, when I realized that we are all suggestible, we constantly influenced by things that surround us, then it got me to the point where I was like, okay, if I'm so suggestible, and I've noticed for myself, I'm extremely suggestible in what it is scientific argument. I follow science. It's easy for me to be convinced by some good empirical evidence. And so I decided, okay, so maybe I can follow suggestions that will be good for me, for my health, for my life, that will be beneficial. So and it was easy for me to change my diet habits, my sleeping habits by listening to good scientific arguments. So I have to say, Andrew Huberman, he's my personal hypnotist. I listen to good scientific argument and I follow it. So uh, that's what I think many people may benefit from, understanding that, right, I'm going to be influenced. So I may not have a lot of free will, but whatever will I have, maybe I can just use it to be selective, to select what will influence me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember as a graduate student, or maybe before that, I think I had taken a psycholinguistics course in undergrad. And I remember, and then working with some colleagues in the zoo world, an experimental psychology is so much more rigorous a discipline, if you will, than say microbiology, right? Because there's so many more there's so many variables to play with, and it to me it's a conditioning in its own right to be an experimental psychologist and a researcher in that space. You're really and I thought experimental psychology was fascinating but also a very difficult course. I think that the field doesn't get enough respect in that regard, the behavioral sciences. Whereas, some people think of immunology, molecular genetics. They think of those as the harder sciences, but quite frankly, this of the social sciences, those folks could learn a heck of a lot from people in experimental psych. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there because it's probably one reason that I didn't move into that direction. It was probably I probably deemed it way too challenging. Um, just so many things to be thinking about. So I really respect you and your field. Uh, Not to take anything away from my mentors, but I was in the behavioral space for a while, so I completely get that, or honor it. So yeah, so I guess where I'm going with that is that I'm thinking that you probably, when you talk about, um, you know, empiricism, you're really walking the talk, and it makes sense why you would, you are very evidence-based in ways that even some of the clinicians in the biomedical field, for example, might not be.
Hmm. Yeah, it's easier for me, definitely. I study human mind and human behavior, so following that is easier for sure.
I mean, a good example might have been in the primate anthropology world, primatology world, you know, uh, collecting, look using ethograms to study primate behavior in captivity. Um, Collecting a ton of data versus a biomarker where you're capturing cortisol, salivary
Hmm.
cortisol, for example. Yeah, there may be, it may be technical to kind of process biological data in that way, but really taking this volume of behavioral information and then synthesizing it, but also the experimental design is just it's a whole nother ball game. So I don't know. I think it's very interesting. But anyways, going back to hypnosis, how as a researcher, how what are some of the new applications or some of the new research areas uh, where folks in your field are helping the clinicians? What are maybe some of the directions people are going, and maybe specifically your research direction?
Well, I'm going to talk about my research here. One of the studies I published on hypnosis was on hypnotic hallucinations. So we know in visual perception there is a phenomenon called negative color after effect. You you know what it is. If you would stare at the, let's say, bright red circle for some time, and like you look at it for a long time, and then you move your eyes and you look at the wall, then where the red circle was on the wall, you will see bluish greenish circle, right? So you will hallucinate that. It will be the after effect. And it's a very complex chain of neural processes that lead to that hallucination, but it is known. It is you can try for yourself. What I did, I was curious whether we will have that after effect if instead of looking at actual red uh, colored circle, we will hallucinate that red circle. So pretty much my question was, will our brain hallucinate after effect after hallucinating red color to begin with? So, what I did, I invited participants and I induce hallucination of red color, and then I measured whether they would see the after effect or not. And I actually show that they did have the after effect, even though to begin with they didn't have physically present red color. So um, that added to some understanding of what brain does and how it navigates the reality and how, when they say everything is in your head. So it's pretty much even something that we know that is a physiological response of your brain, of your visual system. Brain would do that as long as it believes that it's real.
Wow.
So
That's powerful. So some of the applications for that, though, I could see, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will. In the military, for example, I could imagine that some s similar techniques in desensitizing people perhaps can be used. Is that at all in the ballpark?
Well, hypnosis is used a lot in desensitizing and working with people's phobias and traumas, right, to decondition people. So it definitely is a very powerful tool. Uh, but here, I think my study shows that it applies to vision as well. Like we always say that seeing is believing, and seeing with your eyes is like the ultimate proof of its existence of something. So I'm adding this component. It was like, well, not necessarily it exists out there. It may all be in your head. So it's good to know about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was kind of thinking that if in the military, for example, if people are wearing night vision goggles, for example, and then they're switching rapidly back and
Mm,
forth,
mm.
that perhaps there's an application to desensitize
That's right.
people so that they don't suffer the consequences if they have to navigate carefully and in a short, bursts
Yeah.
of
I
time.
like your thinking. I like your application of my
Yeah,
findings.
no, I'll
This is
write a
not
grant.
my job.
I'll write a grant for you somehow and see if
There
we
we
can
go.
get the Department of Defense to no, I think there's something there. Yeah, wow. Exciting. So do you feel like do you feel that sometimes you'd rather do more clinical work or more research? I've always heard in different professions, for example, in my field, actually a famous bear biologist, guy who studied tigers and pandas actually. Um, well, pandas are bears, tigers are cats, but he was a well-known carnivore biologist at the Smithsonian. We were at an event somewhere and he said, the zoo curators want to well, he said the zoo curators want to be doing research and the researchers want to be doing more hands-on work. And then he said the same with the zoo vets. The zoo vets who are doing research want to do more clinical work, and the clinicians want to be doing more research. So, anyways, you get where I'm going. Do you find yourself or have you found your kind of perfect place? It sounds like you get to do a little bit of both or a lot of both.
Yes, yes. I mean, to your analogies, like, every curly haired girl wants to have long and flat hair and the other way around. So just like getting but yeah, I try to do both. I am greedy in that sense. I really love what I do. I think now I'm more focused on research and teaching. So being a college professor helps me to apply some of my knowledge in both fields, research and hypnotherapy. So yeah, I guess that's my main focus right now.
Now, one last thing. As far as teaching goes, I think you teach statistics for the social sciences. Do you, how do the students like that? I mean, those can be tough courses to teach. How do you
Oh,
like that?
I personally love statistics. I'm that strange person. I do love statistics. I love teaching statistics. I had this student last semester. She stayed in my course for 4 weeks, and then she gets up and leaves, and she's like, "Well, I'm in the wrong course." And I'm like, "Wow, like I kept you here for 4 weeks. I feel that I feel good about myself." So I like teaching it. I teach statistics um, as anything I approach in life, both from both perspectives, theory and application. So my students as they learn about theory of statistical analysis, they do that. So we do a lot of data analysis as we learn about theory. So all those courses, I try to combine um, life applicable examples and theory. So either it's statistical methods, either there's an EEG data collection course that I teach where students learn how to do neuroimaging, how to collect data from EEG headsets and see what's going on in the brain on the screen while people are performing some tasks. So they do that physically. They actually get to experience and train for that while learning something theoretically. So that's my main approach. You have to do and you have to know and understand.
Yeah, I think it's important the examples that a statistician uses in teaching because when you're teaching younger or even graduate students. I remember I took a course in statistics for the life sciences or biological sciences, and it was taught by a limnologist, a freshwater biologist. And so he used a lot of phytoplankton examples, which are great if you're a limnologist, but it doesn't necessarily capture the attention of everybody else, right? But when I took stats in the social sciences, there was that particular professor used a larger array of examples, and I tended to learn. I learned more in the social sciences class, not necessarily because I was more interested, but I think there was some more rigor applied to some of the tests. It made it really accompanied. Well, it's a precursor to the experimental psych course, and so it just made a little more sense for me. I shouldn't say that would be for everybody, but wow, I'm impressed that you teach that. You're doing the research. It's an eclectic career being in academia. So I think it's fascinating and that you were inspired by something you came across. Um whereas jumped into graduate school perhaps and then were handed a project and maybe you were, but the inspiration came out of personal experience. So because I don't think that's true for everybody who goes into graduate school. So
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I see a lot of students in graduate school and those who are generally inspired and motivated by their own intrinsic curiosity, they do better.
right,
That's
100%. Well, thank you so much. I'd love to have you back on at some point if you want. You may have had enough of me, but um, the cognitive sciences are really interesting, and I think um, it's a lot of people hear stuff in the social media space and clinical stuff, but they're also missing things in the periphery that are also extremely valuable. So there's so much overlap, but thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you if you want them to find you?
um they can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I have Instagram, so I can give you all the links so they can find
Sure.
me there.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope it gets a little warmer in New York
Yeah,
State.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
And you have a great day.
you're welcome. Thank you. That was great.
Okay.
Wait a second. Let's see.